All right.
Wow.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it.
They like you. They really like you. This conversation started backstage. We were talking. I was like, Brian, they're calling your name right now. We were talking about, I said, are you a surfer and whatever?
Yeah.
She's like,
I figure if the Trump administration was looking to kill two birds with one stone, this would probably be a good place to start. Don, why don't you?
How about
let
get two birds with one stone?
yeah. I don't want to give anybody any ideas. I mean, yeah. Why don't you let folks know about your history, your run-ins with the administration?
You guys know my run-ins, right? You all know. Seriously, this is about you, my friend. I'm so proud of this. I was up late last night. I did a FaceTime call with him that I put on the thing. I was like, Brian, I'm just finishing your book, and I would like to know, can I ask you anything tomorrow when we do it? And he said, yes. I said, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. And I said, you know what? All right, you're probably going to regret that. And he goes, I probably will. And
I mean, look, I've seen your interviews. I saw one of your interviews with Elon Musk in particular. I'm sure he regretted that,
So, Brian, let's talk about what we do. This book really is sort of I don't know if it's a culmination, but is an offshoot of what you and I do every single day, right? Which is work our asses off to tell the American people and beyond, to give them the truth about what's happening with this administration. So, so why don't we talk about some news of the day? Because I think we're very comfortable with doing that. I don't like to have, you notice I have no questions.
Yeah.
I think the best conversations come when we just have a conversation, right? So let's talk about what happened today with with Todd Blanche and
Jay Clayton.
Jay Clayton,
yes.
He's the DNI nominee, right?
Yes, and I, for one, think that the makings of a great director of national intelligence is first and foremost the abject inability to answer the question, who won the 2020 election? That's what I look for.
Is that crazy? They always get hung up on that one, right? They always get hung up. They're like, ugh.
I almost feel for them, because on one hand, if you're honest about it, you risk losing the affection of Donald Trump, and you couldn't possibly have that. But on the other hand, if you don't, then the whole world thinks you look like a clown.
Yeah.
And Jay Clayton was like the second one. I choose the second one. But you know what? That's the litmus test. You have to be willing to toe the line and refuse to acknowledge objective reality about 2020.
Did you guys see it today? Did anyone see that? So I got to see the clip, but because I was making content all day, and I'll tell you, but I interviewed some interesting people. We'll talk about that later. So when I saw it, it's crazy because he kept saying, I'm not going to engage in it, I'm not going to involve. You're there to answer. Those are the questions you're supposed to be answering.
His exact response was, I'm not going to engage in theater. That's what he said. He thinks
while engaging in theater,
having to answer objective reality, somebody putting you on the spot to say, are you capable of acknowledging objective reality, is the other person doing theater and not you saying Joe Biden won the 2020 election because he got more votes. But here we are.
Why do you think it's so hard for them?
Well, I mean, you have to be willing to lie. And I think on that point in particular, and this actually brings us to not just today, but to tomorrow, that point in particular is really potent. Because if you're willing to keep up the con, that point is going to serve as a pretext for Trump to be able to say, and this is what I think is going to happen tomorrow evening. There's a presidential address that's supposed to happen at 9 o'clock. There are some rumors that Trump is going to use that presidential address to, for example, claim that there was foreign interference in the 2020 election. But the reason he's going to say that is because that will serve as a pretext then for him to be able to say, okay, there was foreign interference, and so now we have to take extenuating circumstances to make sure that this never happens again. To make sure that he can maybe put forward an executive order, an emergency executive order. And we've seen the extent to which he's attempted to subvert our elections, whether it's by passing the Save America Act, which would basically federalize state-run elections. He's tried to pass executive orders banning mail-in voting, which, by the way, he himself uses. That was struck down in court. He refuses to rule out the possibility of ICE going to the polls. And so he has all of
Don't forget about the commissioners, that he got rid of all of the election commissioners.
Right. So, that was just a few days ago. Gutted the Election Assistance Commission, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So he's trying to, you can tell he's trying behind the scenes. He keeps getting stymied because he's ham-handed and doesn't have the right to do any of this, and the courts have been a pretty effective bulwark against him, with the exception of the Supreme Court. We'll talk about that. But
I was going to say that Ossoff and Warnock are not legitimate senators because there was interference in the election.
Right.
But there's no lever in the Constitution nor congressionally or any to get rid of them as.
No, of course not. But it's not really to do that. I mean, this isn't. There's no legitimacy on the merits. Remember, in the aftermath of the 2020 election, we found that the January 6th subcommittee told us that he said, just say the election was stolen, leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman. So he's not looking for a real reason. He's not looking for like a well-sourced reason to suggest this. He just wants the talking point out there, the flimsy pretext that he can glom onto and then run with it.
Yeah, because if his folks will believe whatever he says, and even if they don't believe it, they want to believe it.
Or they just pretend.
And they just pretend, pretend, and they want to own the libs.
Right.
Right, which is...
I interviewed Adam Schiff today, and I asked him if there was any of his Republican colleagues who are willing to acknowledge objective reality, who are willing to say what the con is, to expose the con. And he was like, you know, look, nobody's ever bet money, nobody's ever lost money betting against the cowardice of the GOP. Yeah. So, I mean, would you presume that there's going to be any Republicans? Do you think Cornyn or Cassidy, the people who've been ousted by virtue of Trump's own ill will toward them, would they have the spine to step up?
No. I mean, people they usually don't have a spine to step up until it's over.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh, well, this is awful, this is terrible. It's like, what? If you had done that from the very beginning, perhaps you would still have a job. You wouldn't be primaried if you actually stood up to this guy. So, you know, that's where I am on it. Let's talk about this.
Let's do it.
All right. So, the day after, I'm getting so old I can't even, the day after I need glasses, and that's in bold print. Shameless, just real quick, Shameless was like a year and a half ago?
A year and 11 months ago.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. Masochistic.
The day after.
My dear publishers in the audience, and I'm telling you right now, we're not going to go for number 3, which is what I say today, and then he'll ask me in about a month and a half, and I'll say yes.
Writing a book when you're in process, it's really painful.
Yeah, it's like I would presume it's like pregnancy.
I was going to say it's like birthing a child. You wrote your book between like 10 p.m. and 1 a.m.
Yeah. Most of the writing, because I'm not sure if y'all are privy to the news cycle, but it doesn't really slow down until and I'm on West Coast time, so things finally quiet down at about 10 o'clock, and I have a few hours of solitude.
Well, I wrote a #1 bestseller, Brian, and no, I wrote it in the back of an SUV at midnight. During
whole thing?
COVID. Yeah, during COVID,
How long was this car ride?
2 hours.
You wrote your whole book
I would
in
say
2 hours?
I drove in to the city every single day. Usually during the week, I had an apartment where I stayed here.
Okay, so it wasn't just one day.
And so I had to, so back and forth every single day. My boss wanted us to be in the studio, not everybody at once. So one anchor would come in and one would leave. One would leave and one would come in. And so I would go in. My show was on from 10 to midnight. And so I would write it in the back of the car, and then I would call my editor and I would say, what do you think about this? How about this? And I wrote it, I think, my book in like 4 months.
Wow.
Right? It was pretty fast. But let's talk about you. How to wield power in a post-Trump world. Because we're talking about the degradation, just how much of an effort it is to live every single day and not to open an alert or turn on the television and go, oh my God, what is he talking about? The reflecting pool. So is there? First of all, okay, quick. Have you ever tried to take an X-Acto knife to a swimming pool? You really can't do that much damage to it, right? And so maybe the damage came from driving your big ass onto, what do you call it?
The SUV.
A motorcade into the reflecting pool. Perhaps that's where the damage came from.
Also, you got to imagine, he keeps saying that they have these elusive vandals who drove 350 feet through the reflecting pool. That thing is under 24/7 surveillance. You think Trump is going to exercise discretion about releasing that video?
No.
The guy released an AI slop of him dumping shit on protesters for the No Kings rally. You think that? But when it comes to the reflecting pool, that would prove out his point. That's when he's going to exercise some discretion.
Poor Harry Sisson.
Harry Sisson.
Right?
I know.
So, do you think there's going to be a post-Trump world? I'm serious about that.
Yes.
Considering what you said about the election.
There will be. There will be, I wouldn't dedicate my life to this if I didn't think that there was hope that there's something better on the other side of this thing. So yes, there will be a post-Trump world. What my goal was for this was, look, we have a very disillusioned electorate. We had a disillusioned electorate on the left, which in large part led to Republicans winning in the way that they did in the aftermath of 2024, and there was a massive realignment, which is why Republicans run the House, the Senate, the White House, and won the popular vote. Now we have more disillusioned voters because of Trump's glaring inability, his unwillingness to actually deliver on what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to lower prices. Prices are rising because of his trade wars. They said they were going to release the Epstein files. Now they're suppressing the Epstein files. Said that inflation was going to go down. Now inflation's 30% higher than when Biden left office. So everything they promised, said there was going to be no new foreign wars. Now we're engaged in a 4-month war that's cost $125 billion. So you have a disaffected electorate on the left, now a disaffected electorate on the right. And so I think that we're going to have, if only owed to the fact that these people on the right are so incompetent that they basically snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, I think we're going to have one more bite at the apple to get these people. But that requires us making sure that we can actually deliver when we get them back in this tent, when we get them back in this coalition. And I think that Democrats, unfortunately, have a tendency to be more deferential to norms and institutions and processes and the filibuster and the parliamentarian than just getting shit done. And so I want to have this conversation now. I want to have this conversation now so that we're not in a position where, first of all, let's say we're lucky enough to achieve the Herculean feat of gaining power, and then the even more Herculean feat of actually passing progressive legislation, that we don't get into office and say, okay, we've got full control of government. We have this rare sliver of time where we can do amazing things. Let's impanel a commission. And that commission will have 18 months to come up with their recommendations. And then once they have the recommendations, we'll decide whether to implement them between 2 and 5 years from now. And it's going to be glorious. And nothing happens in the meantime because we're so deferential to these institutions. And there's also the added problem of, because Republicans are tearing these institutions down, the knee-jerk reaction from the left is, well, we have to be the defenders of these things. And so every time the Republicans try and tear down, some facet of government, we have to say, no, we want to protect it. We want to make sure that it stays the same. And I think in large part, the move in 2024 that we saw from left to right was against the status quo, against these institutions that aren't working for people.
But even now, I think it's sort of against the status quo. If you look at what's happening, I believe, you can correct me, maybe you have a different thing, correct me if you think I'm wrong. I believe that the energy in the Democratic Party is on the progressive side, which people would have called before, oh, the far left or whatever. I mean, if you look at what's happening with candidates around the country, if you look at the mayor of this great city,
who, by the way, I'm interviewing tomorrow afternoon, and I'm very excited, and I'll tell you this, and those who are watching online, but nobody else will know. I'm going to ask about the horse-drawn carriages in Central Park.
Yeah.
Because I think that is so fucked up, and I cannot believe it's the year 2026, and that is still happening. And I don't know. The animal stuff kills me.
It's abuse.
I'm wearing socks with my dog's face on them.
Yeah. So I was telling you today, it just was before we walked up.
All of my mental health is predicated on the continued survival of a 15-year-old dog.
Oh my God, I have a 17-year-old with a diaper. So, but I also have a 10-year-old, and today, if you own a dog, thunderstorms, not good. So I was in my studio is in it used to be my dining room. And so I'm doing my
life
show.
of a content creator.
I know.
You used to have a dining
live,
room.
And here comes the dog. And he's like at my feet. I just picked him up. That's what I like about doing independent journalism.
Yeah.
But back to what I was saying. Even if
Don asked me earlier, he goes, does your dog get afraid when there's thunderstorms? I'm like, I live in Los Angeles. There's no thunderstorms out there.
You guys freak out when it's like misty outside.
That's right.
It's crazy.
That's right.
There's a downpour. It's
yeah.
like, no, it's just
once every other year when there's a downpour, we get pretty nervous.
Yeah. So, and look at the support that even, I know that he's out, but that Graham Plattner had with these same ideas, right?
Yeah.
You know, no value judgment on what happened, but I'm just saying the ideas that he espouses and believes in, or he says he does, I think that's where the party is now, and I think that's where the country is now. I don't think there's anything far left or liberal lefty about people having a living wage,
right?
People having health care.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And
so Democrats need to play, as you write about here, the right game. You say the wrong game, the long game, and then the right game.
So in large part, we have seen the extent to which Republicans are really effective at drawing up plans and executing them over a long period of time. And I just don't think Democrats have the investment in these kind of long-term plans. I mean, redistricting started in 2010. In the aftermath of Obama's election. Democrats had the majority of even state legislative seats in 2008 when Obama won election. Cut to, in 2010, they started to carry out this plan, and I wrote about this in my previous book as well, so that they can gerrymander state legislative seats and, by extension, congressional seats across the country. And here we are in the year 2026, 16 years later, Republicans are still gerrymandering states across the country. They just got 12 more seats this cycle, and Democrats managed to get one state to redraw its maps. 16 years after the redistricting plan was drawn up by Republicans. I mean, thank God California did it, but the fact that all we have to show for ourselves in this fight is that California managed to redraw 5 seats while Republicans just this cycle got 12 more is a testament to the asymmetry of how these two sides exercise power.
But don't you think it's that Democrats, one of the major problems, I believe, and I don't want to beat up on Democrats, but they have a tendency to let their enemies define them, right? I never let my enemies define. I am who I think I am and who I want to be. And I think Democrats, thank you, I think Democrats should be, you know, I'm generalizing here, but they should be the same way. Why would you let the Republican Party or people who are not trying to do the right thing for this country, why would you let them define you as woke and liberal and, you know, and libtard and all of that? Why do you care?
I think in large part too, and this is something that I think you and I will be able to speak to with some authority, is we haven't had any dominance in the media ecosystem for a long time because, you know, we have right-wing media that is avowedly right-wing, and then for a long time, all we had on the left was what Republicans had called liberal media, but in effect, it was just legacy media. And you worked at CNN for a long time. I mean, there are the ways in which legacy media will bend over backwards to prove that it's not liberal, I mean, it just is mind-blowing. And so you have one side that is right-wing media that will, I mean, I remember there was a time where Sean Hannity went on stage for Donald Trump to participate in a rally.
Yeah.
So that's right-wing media, showing up at rallies to rally for Donald Trump. And then you have liberal media, which, you know, ran God knows how many cover stories about Hillary's emails. I mean, so when you have both sides effectively against the left, that creates kind of an ecosystem where obviously the Republicans are able to own the narrative. Now we're finally in a situation, I mean, it took losing the House, the Senate, and the White House, but I think now we're finally in a situation where the left recognizes the importance of independent media. And you know, I'm grateful that they do. I'm sad for the fact that it took a catastrophe of the 2024 election to recognize, hey, maybe embrace independent media a little bit, but hopefully now we'll see a world in which there is, you know, if nothing else, at least some parity between the two sides.
But you worked in corporate media for a while, right?
So I was a contributor for MSNBC for about 18 months.
But I'm sure you found in those conversations, it was always frustrating to me, because I would not allow this, and I did not like it, but there was always some false equivalence, or false equivalent that you had to have. Well, if you say something about a Democrat, then you've got to say something about a Republican, and we have to make room for MAGA because they are, you know, the ones who are in power now. And I said, well, that's not true, because it is not a right to appear on this network. It's a privilege. And if you have the privilege and the opportunity to speak directly to the American people, then you should respect them enough to come on and tell the truth. And if you're not going to do that, we don't have to invite you on. I mean, it was like, what are you talking about? They did not get it.
Well, I was going to ask how that sentiment, you know, you espousing that sentiment turned out.
Well, as you know, I interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy, and he said that black people gained their rights during the civil rights movement because the NRA fought for their rights to have guns. And that is like... And I was like, I know I'm on a morning show, I'm kind of sleepy, but what the fuck are you talking about? And then 4 days later, I was gone.
But you know, the interesting part of independent media is now, I'm not sure if everybody knows, but I typed in whitehouse.gov a few weeks back and found out that I was on Donald Trump's enemies list. And
you are a real enemy of the people. You know he calls the press enemy of the people.
yeah, that's right.
So you're officially enemy. You should, we should get a T-shirt for you.
You know what? If you think I didn't make T-shirts,
you did already.
Put them on my website. You would be sorely mistaken.
It's on your merch.
Well, here, no. I mean, I say that kind of like facetious. I mean, I do have the T-shirts, but I make the point facetiously. But I actually think that there is a legitimate point to make on that, and that is that we have seen the extent to which law firms and universities and tech companies and these media conglomerates and legacy media outlets have all capitulated to Donald Trump when he's attacked them one by one, which blows my mind because, you know, these are the most powerful people in the world. These are the wealthiest people in the world. These are the people who have the most resources in the world. And I would just imagine that if you have fuck you money, wouldn't it be worth it to be able to say fuck you?
Yeah.
And yet...
Yeah.
But they don't. They don't. And Trump was so effective that when he went after each one of these different entities or people or institutions, they immediately capitulated. And that made me so angry because it wasn't just them capitulating. It also sent a message to everybody else in the space that it was going to be that much more difficult because now you have basically blood in the water. Now you've got an emboldened Trump because he said, look how easy it was to get Paul Weiss to capitulate. Look how easy it was to get these law firms to capitulate. Look how easy it is to own Meta and YouTube, who settled, and ABC News, who settled, and CBS News, who settled. All of these institutions, it's so easy to own these people. And so when he got to the point where he started putting my name and David Pakman's name on this media offenders list, you know, it would have been easy, and I think if you ask my parents, probably smart, for me to just quiet down for 5 minutes and not get myself into any more trouble. But I remembered how angry it made me that all of these other institutions capitulated and folded so quickly. And the reason was, like, you know, these people are leveraged by the federal government, but independent media doesn't need anything from the federal government. I don't need their approval for anything. I don't need approval for a merger or an acquisition. I don't need anything from Trump. And so when they got to the point where they put my name and some of my friends' names on this list, we could basically just promote it and wear it as a badge of honor. And it got to the point where all of these other content creators were saying, how do I get on this list? I want to get on this list. Everybody viewed it as a badge of honor. And the Trump administration, ironically enough, and I think this was the first time that they had done something like this, didn't add anybody else to the list. Because all it did was amplify our voices even more. And again, like, we used it as a badge of honor. So that list is just staying still as it is. And I think that it's interesting because independent media is independent, and that's the beauty of it. We don't need anything from this White House.
I shouldn't be hanging out with you because I'm already in enough trouble.
Yeah.
So why am I?
That's
why am I with you?
That's what I'm saying. This would be an easy spot.
No, but
I do want to ask while we have. I know I tried to ask you this once. Now I'm going to ask. I'm going to try it again. How is everything going on that front?
I thought you were going to ask me how the food is in jail.
Yeah, that'll be the next one.
How's it going?
Yeah.
It's still going. They're not letting this go.
Yeah.
But the thing is, too, is that they don't really have the manpower to fight it because everyone has quit in the Justice Department. People who have real experience and who really are, public servants, real public servants, they don't want to have their name attached to some BS for, signing a warrant or an affidavit or whatever to be part of an investigation.
Well, the interesting part about that is you even have Todd Blanche himself, who was just referred to bar counsel in New York for that effort where he negotiated the settlement where Trump tried to pay himself $10 billion. And so I do hope, y'all are from New York. I hope you put in a good word at your bar counsel here. Hopefully they have a stiff spine, but it'll be one more instance of you know, if that happens, of Donald Trump's attorneys basically sacrificing their livelihood for some bogus, you know, retribution effort.
I'm gonna make a couple phone calls and say, look, I know from experience this is a bad guy, but if you actually listen to the people who have worked with him, who have known him in past years, they said he was actually a very likable guy. And then all of a sudden he became, you know, he got proximity to Donald Trump and he became this. The reason that which I believe is similar to what you were discussing with the media companies. Number one, they don't really have any convictions. Their convictions are, you know, green. Their party is green, meaning money, right? But others who may be higher up, who have enough money, I think that their ideologies align. If you look at what's happening with the Ellisons, they are very much conservative MAGA people. My concern is the consolidation of media, but not only that, the consolidation of conservative media. So there is an ideological aspect to it, there's a money aspect to it, and some of them just want, you know, their mergers and their acquisitions to go through so that they can make more money.
Right.
But people who are, you know, these multi-billionaires don't need any more money. They will not be able to spend the money they have in 100 lives.
Don, have you ever seen a multi-billionaire who had enough money, who said he had enough money or she had enough money? Has there ever been one that's like, I'm good?
No.
There you go.
No, but I think I would be one of those billionaires.
Oh, every millionaire says that before they become a billionaire.
No, but look, there gets to a point that I do know this. I do have, I'm, you know, lucky enough to have some very wealthy friends. And there's a point between like, you know, 50 million or $100 million and where your lifestyle just really doesn't change that much. Like once you're at the point where you own an airplane, that's it. You can basically go wherever you want, do whatever you want to do. So having, you know, let's say you're close to $1 billion. Having $1 billion and $50 billion is not really much more. Your life doesn't really change. And so that's why I cannot understand.
You don't have to convince us.
Yeah. That's why I cannot understand these billionaires who don't want to pay more taxes. They think that their tax rates should be lower or the same as the average American person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you have the privilege to live here. You drive on the same roads that we do. We're paying taxes for these roads that you're driving on. You should pay as much or more as we do. And I'm talking about percentage-wise. So yeah, I don't understand it, but that's where we are with that. Todd Blanche has no convictions, and the folks who own these media companies really have no convictions at all, except for money.
No, I think that
the
consolidation of media is absolutely a concern. I'm wondering if do you have folks that you keep up with at CNN who have spoken to you about the prospect of CNN? I know that there is right now a lawsuit that California Attorney General Rob Bonta just put forward to block the merger of Warner Brothers and Paramount. And he's been a really effective attorney general from out there in California. So we'll see what happens on that front. But have you spoken to anybody at CNN who's expressed any concern? Or the flip side, is there anybody at CNN who you presume will be like, oh, I can see the writing on the wall. Let's already start my veering to the right to make sure that I can keep my spot here.
I cannot reveal my sources, Brian, but I will tell you, yeah, I do have those conversations with people all the time. And usually when I get the text message like, hey, what are you doing? Can we meet for coffee? I usually know. So how does this independent, I know it's going to be, how does this independent thing work?
Yeah.
What should I do? And it's like first of all, you need to get out of that thing that you're in.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to unlearn a whole lot of things. I had to basically retrain myself.
Yeah. Why? What was the biggest shock from legacy media to independent?
That I could say whatever I wanted to. That I didn't have to worry about. I didn't have to second, third, fourth guess everything that came out of my mouth, because I represented, obviously, a brand, as they call it, and I represented 4,500 or 4,800 employees around the world, some of them in war zones, which respectfully, so I had to sort of be measured in what I said. But I also, you know, in that you say, okay, how do I say this without it ending up on the cover of the New York Post or the New York Times, and what's the boss going to say, and are they going to be upset because Fox News, and now I just say it.
Yeah.
And I also, Brian, which is weird because we've reversed each other, so I am usually the guy that was dressed like that, you're the guy who's dressed like this, and now we've completely switched roles.
Well, just for tonight.
Just for tonight.
Yeah.
No, but when I first started out, you were the suit guy.
That's right.
I mean, you look good, you're dashing, you cut a nice silhouette, but you're the suit guy. Why did you change?
So, well, the reason I wore a suit initially was I was shooting my videos, I mean, early days, like 2018, 2019. I was shooting my videos in basically at the foot of my bed, and nobody else was on YouTube, and I was just making these videos for tens and eventually hundreds and eventually thousands of people. But to get people to take YouTube seriously was a bit of a challenge. At that point, YouTube was just prank videos. And when I got my 100,000 subscriber plaque, there's a silver plaque that you get. It's when you hit 100,000 subscribers, it's the first plaque. I was so embarrassed that I was on YouTube that I never even took it out of the box. And now, YouTube gets more views than legacy media. People get their news from YouTube before they get their news from legacy media. So it's a different world, but I kind of had to dress for the job that I wanted, fake it till you make it. And so, if I wanted people to watch YouTube and take some punk 20-something-year-old kid seriously, I was like, I gotta at least put a suit on and make it feel a little bit newsy, even though this is definitely not a platform people took seriously. And then, so it was necessary at that point. And I think it did help to confer a little bit of gravitas to a kid, who was shooting videos at the foot of his bed.
I had to unlearn formalities and not speak like I was a news anchor.
Yeah.
So, and that was really tough for me. And that I could say, shit, or whatever. And
apparently it's not that easy.
It was
still
totally
do it.
Well, no, I don't like, some people, my mom texts me all the time. She goes, you stop cursing on that TV.
My mom also
That's what her text sounds like.
Yeah.
You stop cursing on that TV.
Yeah.
But that's what she'll call me. She goes, okay now,
yeah.
potty mouth.
I think the hardest thing for me to get used to was when I did my 18-month stint with MSNBC, and this was just as a contributor, and I did weekly videos on MSNBC's YouTube channel. And first of all, I would write my script, send it to them, and their standards and practices or their legal department would go through it, and it would take a day. So already, when I write my videos now, I'm writing them, I shoot them, and they're out. And so the video goes from concept to reality within maybe 3 hours, maybe 2 hours. And so it's a pretty short half-life. And then when I was with MSNBC, they were like, all right, we'll get this back to you tomorrow. Yeah. And then I could actually shoot it, and then I would send the raw file to them, and they would edit it, and that would come back the next day. And also the other hard part was allegedly, saying the word allegedly.
Allegedly, reportedly.
Yeah.
Yeah, sources
I had to say allegedly for everything.
Yeah, allegedly. That's what, I don't know if you guys know Jen Welch, right? I've taught it as like, Jen, when we do shows, I started by saying, everything that we talk about is allegedly. Because she goes off. You're right about that.
So,
yeah.
But then, I moved out of the suits because in the aftermath of the 2024 election, I felt like Democrats had a pretty obvious problem just connecting with people. And people don't walk around in suits most of the time. And so, there was a little bit of an authenticity problem. And
we were thinking the same thing at the same time.
Yeah.
Authenticity.
Yes.
That's really what I wish that Democrats, and they're kind of getting it, it's authenticity. And what I say is I sort of equate Democrats to legacy media because people don't sit, look at how you guys are dressed now. People don't sit around and engage in conversations, sorry Brian, in three-piece suits and cocktail dresses, right? They talk about it at their kitchen tables, they talk about it at the bar, maybe they're at the gym or whatever, and it's usually very casual. Every bit of what I had to unlearn was, or learn, is that everything is a barrier, and you want to have as few barriers as possible. So if you're the camera swinging around the shiny desk, that's one barrier that takes you away from your audience, right? And then you've got the suit on and the tie. That's another formality that separates, puts another level of a layer of separation between you and your audience. And you got the desk, and you got that, and you got that, and you got the makeup on. Now, I don't have a makeup on. I wear a t-shirt that says, old people be knowing. And people are like, yeah, Don Lemon, old people be knowing. And you have the same thing with your audience. And people want...
Also, old people be knowing.
People want authenticity, and they want to feel like they can relate to you in some way. And I feel like Democrats, for the most part, I'm generalizing, there's some very good Democrats. I happen to be an independent. But I think Democrats were missing that, but they're catching on, I hope.
They're catching on. Look, I think that obviously Democrats have a brand issue, but in terms of fixing the brand issue, I know one of the concerns was like, okay, we have to take the existing slate of Democrats and just teach them how to do things, teach them how to talk like normal human beings, teach them how to go on podcasts, teach them how to dress like regular people, teach them how to talk about cultural issues. I think the way to fix the Democrats' brand problems is going to happen organically when Democrats start, A, stepping aside so that a younger generation of leaders can step into their places.
Who already have those qualities.
Who already have those qualities and don't need to do it inauthentically or inorganically, but also, and that's happening right now. And I think that it's going to happen, again, it's going to happen organically. It's not something that you could just teach these existing people. So when they step aside and make room for other people, those people are going to then represent the brand. It's not something that you can just fix by slapping a new logo on the Democratic Party. It's going to fix itself when we start electing people who can more accurately reflect the people that they're supposed to represent. And so I think as we see these younger, more dynamic, more charismatic, more tech-savvy candidates across the country start to get elevated into these positions, and as some of these older Democrats who have been there forever, who can't communicate in this media environment, either step aside or get bullied into stepping aside, I think it's going to help fix this brand in a way that is actually organic. And so we have great candidates coming up. We have people like James Tallarico, for example. To look at somebody like that, it just, it inspires a lot of hope at what a new iteration of this party can be. You have somebody like AOC, who may or may not run for president at some point. I would love to take a poll of this room. Here are the two options: run for president and run for Senate. And you have to choose one. So applause if you'd like to see AOC run for the United States Senate. Applause if you'd like to see AOC run for president. Oh, man.
This is, I wrote something down on the way here that I wanted to ask you about, because to me, this book, by the way, I agree with you 100%. And when I say that at like large gatherings, a lot of people are like, you're crazy. No
Which
way.
one?
That AOC or Mamdani. I was actually at a book party this past weekend. And some, I said, if you...
Don's whole life is hawking books for people.
Yeah. You're going to return the favor, so don't... and so they were saying, and then you get, a Mamdani and you get an AOC, and then finally, no one was saying anything, and I said, well, what's wrong with Mamdani and AOC? And then I told him the thing that I said earlier about the energy in the Democratic Party being there, and I've been saying this for 3 years or 2 years since I've been doing the show, and even when I was, the last year when I was on Legacy Media, so I was like, they are winning.
Yeah.
And
not only that, they're popular, and they're getting shit
Democrats
done.
are not, right?
Yeah.
Anybody when people say that we want to be in that, whatever that middle is, there's no energy, no excitement in the middle.
Yeah.
Do you disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree at all. I think it's obvious that there's not energy in the middle. But look, I think like even the irony is that the difference in the two sides right now is that the fringe of the right will engage in abject, outright election denialism. They don't think the Democrats have a right to be in power. The fringe of the left will advocate for Medicare for all. And so I think when you talk about the extremists on the left, it is crazy. It is crazy to think that you can paint them with the same brush as extremists on the right when one side is advocating for people to have health care.
Yeah. Amen.
And you look at they drooled at the prospect of vilifying Zoran Mamdani, who within 5 minutes of taking office filled 175,000 potholes.
Yeah. Look, I cannot applaud for that. I can't find my question, but basically, your book to me sounds like policies. I was going to ask you if you're running for president.
No.
Because it sounds like you're laying out your policies here. When you're talking about, which I agree with, and you and I discussed this a little bit, I agree with the expansion of the Supreme Court.
Yes, and I would love to talk about that right now if you want.
Yeah. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Why do you think I'm bringing it up, Brian?
Yeah.
So, but when you talk about the expansion of the Supreme Court, getting rid of the Electoral College, I agree with all of those things. And I think that's real, but some people will say, well, you're doing what they're doing on the other side, but this one is it's okay because it's for us.
On this idea of not exercising power for fear of Republicans taking what we've done and abusing it for themselves in the future, they're already abusing it. So at this point, what do you have to lose? You can either opt to just entrench the status quo, or you can fight to actually make something happen. So I am so not moved by this idea that, oh, you couldn't do this because imagine the slippery slope that you're creating. But I actually think on the Supreme Court in particular, it's important because it is foundational. You can't get anything else done if you're going to leave in place a 6-3 conservative court that not only can, but will strike down anything that you actually manage to pass. And so I think that there are a few arguments you can make. One is the historical argument. 9 justices is not in the Constitution. And in fact, that number has changed throughout history. The number of Supreme Court justices historically has comported with the number of federal court circuits. And so in the 1800s, there were 6 federal court circuits, there were 6 Supreme Court justices. Eventually, that number went up to 8 and then 9, and we had 9 Supreme Court justices, 9 federal court circuits. Now we have 13 federal court circuits, but still only 9 Supreme Court justices. That number is so not sacrosanct that even in modern times, it's changed. Mitch McConnell moved that number from 9 to 8 for a year when he was holding that seat open and wouldn't let Merrick Garland get his hearing. So even modern Republicans have proven, have broadcast, have shown us that the number of Supreme Court justices is not sacrosanct.
Bless his heart.
Also, that proof of life, are you buying it? I'll tell you what.
Any Southerners in here, you guys know what bless his heart means, right? Okay, just checking out. Do you buy
it?
No.
I mean, I got to say, for a guy who just spent a month in the hospital, who we weren't sure was alive or dead, he looked really good in that picture.
Yes, and
that picture was taken in like 1999.
But let me tell you.
Also, what hospital gives you a nice pressed flannel shirt, wife in full makeup, sitting like a...
With a newspaper.
And you need the requisite proof of life newspaper?
You know, look, as you age, your eyes
just a standard picture of me right here with today's paper.
It's so much easier to read an iPad, a newspaper. But let me just say, you know, I spoke to him for about 17 minutes the other day, and he sounded completely fine. My other friend talked to him for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean...
My favorite was my buddy Aaron Rupar, who I think folks should probably know in here if they have the misfortune of spending time on Twitter, responded to this tweet about Scott Jennings saying that he spoke to Mitch McConnell for 20 minutes, and Aaron wrote, "Did he talk back?"
It's true. It's true. I wish we had a monitor. I wish we had it here, because when last we saw him, he fell down when a reporter asked him a question, and he turned around and just went, Right? And so, look, I'm not wishing any harm on Mitch McConnell. I just think it's bullshit when they're saying, I spoke to him for 17 minutes. That's awfully specific. When you're looking, going, who does that? They say, how long did you and Brian talk? I don't know, our talk was about an hour, you know, at the 92nd Street Y. Like, I'm not looking at the clock saying, Brian and I spoke for 28 minutes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's a little weird. Okay, ready for some questions? Did you say all you wanted to say about the Supreme Court and Electoral College and...
Yeah, I think we got the historical precedent, we have modern times, and then there is a moral imperative to do that, and that's what I was speaking about before, this idea that if you, again, achieve the massive feat that would be taking control of government, you can either leave the Supreme Court as is, this 6-3 majority that will strike anything down, and just be able to say, hey, well, you know what? We got it out of the House, we got it out of the Senate, we got it signed into law, and it was eventually struck down, but we got caught trying. We etched a symbolic victory. That's not good enough. And I think that we need to be in a world where symbolic victories aren't enough, getting caught trying isn't enough. We need to have meaningful, lasting change, and if we actually are serious about that, then the only way to do that is to expand this court.
So, I remember our conversation the other day where I talked about, you know, are you a journalist or not a journalist? He said, you don't call yourself a journalist. I think, that, look, whatever, you're doing the work of a journalist, right? Even though you may not call yourself a journalist. So, this is a question from the audience. There's no name on it, I don't think. Okay. It says, why do journalists just accept answers to questions that they know are bullshit? Why don't any of them from the mainstream media ask for accountability anymore? I could probably answer that one. You go.
I think we have one word, and we could probably both say it at the same time. Do you have your word?
What, for why don't they?
Why don't they?
they're scared.
It's access.
Yeah. Well, it's access. It used to be just access. Now it is. They're afraid that they're going to get fired.
Right. I mean but that's a more recent phenomenon.
Yes,
where when you have consolidation of the media and you have right wing basically oligarchs that control large swaths of the media, then yeah, you're gonna get in trouble. Look, I think that especially in a world where we have such a bifurcated media ecosystem, there isn't even a need for right-wingers to go on anything other than right-wing media. There isn't a need for, frankly, left-wingers to go on anything other than left-wing media. There's enough options that people can choose from, but what that does is create two parallel versions of reality. There is a right-wing reality where Joe Biden didn't win the 2020 election, where the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID itself, you name it. And then there's a left-wing version, which is just the opposite on all of those things. And I think that's the danger in having a media ecosystem that is so separate. I mean, I can tell you, it is so difficult to get right-wingers on my show. The most conservative person I've ever had on is like Adam Kinzinger. And one
is he
time,
a real concern? No.
But one time and this isn't for lack of trying. I've reached out to Marjorie Taylor Greene's office. One time I had reached out to Matt Gaetz's office to try to get him on. And nobody even would ever write back. And Matt Gaetz's office wrote back an email to me. And I wrote a very nice and civil email about the importance of civil dialogue, blah, 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 which I'm sure it would have been super civil with Matt Gaetz. But wrote this email, and they wrote back, and they wrote, "Thank you so much for reaching out. We appreciate it. Quick question before we proceed with this. Was this you?" And proceeded to screenshot about 25 tweets that I had written about Matt Gaetz and his various scandals. Matt Gaetz getting accused of sex trafficking of a minor. I mean, there was even some tweets about that bizarre situation he had where he had a foreign kid live with him.
Oh, he
adopted
what was his name again?
It was
I remember it.
Anybody remember what that kid, Matt Gaetz?
Yeah, it's right. It's at the tip of my tongue.
Say again? Poor boy, I think, yes. In any case, yeah, there were a lot of tweets, and I was like, this is good on you. This is the most clever way I've ever seen somebody deny my request for an interview.
True story, he used to write my bookers all the time because he wanted to be on the show. He wanted to debate me.
Yeah.
And even now, I mean, this is when I was at CNN, and then by the time I think I left, he had the crazy makeup and whatever nose job or whatever.
Oh yeah, the eyebrow lift.
Yeah, is he still on there?
I don't know. I haven't tuned in a while.
I don't watch either. Okay, this is another very important question. What's your thoughts on Democratic Socialists of America, and is there a chance of one for 2028, a 2028 candidate?
I'm pretty unmoved by where people kind of position themselves in terms of the labels within the party. I actually think there's pretty good unanimity among Democrats of all stripes right now in terms of what needs to get done. There are folks from Zoran Mamdani to Abigail Spanberger who've run pretty clearly on an affordability agenda, and I think that picking up that mantle, that economically populist mantle, is going to be smart. I think that the difference between the different factions, the ideological factions of the Democratic Party, have long since been separated a little bit less by ideology, but more by kind of style. And that's actually a problem that I sought to solve with the book itself. Like my goal for this book was, regardless of where you lie on the ideological spectrum, to make sure that people recognize that blind deference to institutions and adhering to kind of the status quo wasn't going to cut it. And so now you even have moderate Democrats who are saying, we need to fight, we need to get something done. It's not enough, again, to just get caught trying. We have to deliver for people. And like I said, there is unanimity in terms of what the left wants. The left, more broadly, wants to deliver health care to people, wants to combat climate change, wants to make sure that we expand voting rights, largely wants to eliminate, to raise the minimum wage. I mean, even with the previous Democratic majority, there were only 2 people who voted against raising the minimum wage. Actually, it might have even just been one. It might have just been Kirsten Sinema who did her little curtsy to make sure that didn't pass. But I think that in large part what I sought to do was make sure that fighting and actually delivering for people, not relying on traditions, but making sure that shit gets done was an important aspect of what a new Democratic Party would look like.
Graham Plattner. Graham Plattner. This is the kind of questions I ask. This could be from me. What the hell happened? And how do we stop the Dems from repeating a similar mistake?
Well, first thing is body scans.
You mean tattoos?
Shirt off. Let's turn around. No, maybe that's not a good idea.
You're gonna get canceled, Brian. Especially with this story.
Yeah. So that is not what I meant by shirt off and turn around.
If we did that, Pete Hegseth would not be in politics.
Yeah. What I meant was, I'll try to say this a little bit more artfully now that those words have already escaped my mouth. Famously, the internet is oh, now I'm all flustered. Is apologetic. Anyway.
There's so many places I could go. I am holding my tongue.
Yeah.
Are you a little flustered about Graham Plattner?
No, about me accidentally saying what we have to do is have candidates. No, what we need to do is make sure that folks are properly vetted. And I understand the attractiveness of somebody like Graham Plattner stylistically, and I think that the problem we made was compensating too much because he exhibited a lot of qualities that I think were missing stylistically from the Democratic Party of today. And so in our desperation, our sprint toward having somebody like that, we were willing to make sacrifices elsewhere that I think that we can't make. I mean, you have to make sure that that kind of baggage doesn't exist. You can have both, right? You have to have both. You have to have somebody who stylistically is able to espouse progressive policies and be able to communicate people in an effective way. And I think regardless of whether you love him or you hate him, and I think most people hate him, it's hard to deny that he was an effective and charismatic communicator. But at the same time, you can't be willing to sacrifice things that I think are a bare minimum in terms of character. And as we work out these kinks in terms of what the party's going to look like moving forward, it's non-negotiable that you do both. We have to have people who are going to be competent, who are going to be charismatic, who are going to be young and progressive, but also who have enough of a decent character that A, we don't get caught in these scandals, and B, you want people of good character anyway, so that you are represented by people who are decent enough to get
I agree. And I mean, look, I think that the whole idea of aging and all of that, I think that's individual, because some people are, a good 70 and some people are not, and some people are a good 30 and they're not. But I am of the belief that if you have young, progressive, or relevant ideas, then I'm cool with you. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your gender is. I don't care what your sexuality is. I don't care as long as you are, you're in the zone where you're doing the right thing. What did you learn? I said, hang on a second. What did you learn? No, I meant from the audience questions. It's sort of a rote question, but I always think it's a very good question because writing a book is a very specific and kind of difficult thing. The level of difficulty, I think, is, to write a good book. What did you learn most from writing this book?
Ooh, that's a good question. Learn that I need very little sleep to function, first and foremost. I think the most important thing is especially focusing on the history of this stuff, I think, and we had touched on this earlier, the amount of time that Republicans have spent creating these plans and how long it would take to carry them out and how patient they are in terms of doing it and how slow Democrats are at responding. And I think, both in this book and my previous book, Shameless, spoke about the extent to which, you have the Powell memo, which eventually leads to Roger Ailes and creating Fox News. And Fox News came about with their fair and balanced slogan. And Fox News' fair and balanced slogan was never meant to mean that Fox News is fair and balanced. It was a balance to what they perceived as the liberal media. And so they were avowedly right-wing. I know that people will look at that and say, well, no, this Fox News is not fair and balanced, but they viewed the ecosystem as being too tilted to the left, and so they were balancing it out by being avowedly right-wing. And I think just the extent to which they have invested in these projects that have lasted for so long. And Democrats need to learn from the strengths of the Republican Party and the right-wing movement more broadly, because they've shown that when they want something, they get it done. And I think that we have to have that same mentality of not allowing, everything to stand in our way, of making sure that we get into government and we don't get there and start operating as if we're there in government to defend the institutions of government, but rather that we're in government so that the government itself can deliver for people. And I think that's got to be the difference.
I can't even end this if I wanted to, because my foot has gone to sleep and I can't stand up. So, but no, we have a little bit more time. So this one is from a great one from, where's Peter M? Hi, Peter M. Hi, how are you? Right in the middle there. How is it that people still believe the blatant lies, and what are your thoughts or expectations for the midterms? Thanks, Peter M.
Thanks, Peter. People believe the lies because, again, we live in an ecosystem where I actually don't think that there is that much exposure to the truth. And so there's a world in which I don't even, I don't lean on those people who've been subjected to right-wing media that much, because I think that they're the victims of what right-wing media is seeking to do, which is just to manipulate people and shove down their throats an alternate reality that only exists in that bubble. And we saw, thanks to Fox's Dominion lawsuit, that $787 million settlement that happened between Fox News and Dominion voting systems, we know that these Fox officials, these right-wing media figures, they know better. And they're hiding the truth from their own viewers because it's part of their political project. But they know the truth. They know that the 2020 election wasn't stolen. We have it right there in black and white. We know what their text messages said, but they have to lie to these people because they are trying to convey a political ideology onto their viewers. They're trying to manipulate these people. So I don't hold it against them. And in fact, I spend a lot of my time trying to persuade people who, by the grace of God, thanks to the algorithm, end up on my page. I'll lean in heavily on Republican officials, but I'm pretty clear-eyed about the fact that I think, in large part, the people who are subjected to this mis and disinformation are the victims of that mis and disinformation. So my job, what I view my job as, is trying to reach people and offer as much of an olive branch as I can to people who've been manipulated.
Just a quick. A quick answer, because...
Oh, and real quick, my thoughts on the midterms.
Yeah.
I'm bullish on the midterms. I think Democrats retake the House, and I think they win the Senate. And look, I could be wrong. I also thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election, and so maybe I'm not the best predictor of things. But look, I think it's going to be increasingly difficult for a Republican Party that swore up and down that they were going to lower costs, that they were going to avoid foreign wars, that they were going to release the Epstein files, that they were going to get inflation under control, that they were going to focus on grocery prices and housing prices and rent prices and the cost of an egg. They went so granular on economic populism that they were talking about the price of a fucking egg. Now seeing all of those problems not only not get fixed, but actually get exacerbated, and there be no Democrats in office in the House, the Senate, or the White House, or the Supreme Court, in majorities to gum up the works. It's just unbridled, unapologetic Republican governance. It's going to be really difficult for these people to claim that it's the Democrats' fault. This is what Republican governance looks like, and I think that is going to be, this election coming up is going to be a referendum on exactly that.
Anyone remember Schoolhouse Rock? So when you're saying that, I'm going, how I hope and pray that they will, but today I am still just a bill. I hope that it happens. I am cautiously optimistic, but what I will tell you, for someone who's been on this planet a lot longer than you, I could probably be your father, is that power doesn't cede power that easily. And from what I see now what this administration is doing, that they will do anything to remain in power, if that means firing everybody around them, if that means forcing subpoenas and whatever it is that they can to get the voting rolls and boxes from Forsyth County, if that means saying, even though it means nothing, that Warnock and Ossoff are not senators, that they're going to do it. There's one thing that you didn't mention that I think is really important. and that is very strong. Well, two things. One is that people do not give up being the preeminent voice. And around MAGA, there's a lot of racism. And so they're not going to give up because they don't want the blacks and the Latinos and even the women to be in charge. So they will fight tooth and nail. That is one of the strongest motivators in America, is white supremacy, and also religious nationalism.
Yeah.
And so we're in a point right now where people are being controlled, and they're saying, oh, God doesn't do this, and look at what Pete Hegseth is doing at the Defense Department. And so I hope that it happens, but I've been around I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I'm just nervous about what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and look, I think it's fair and healthy to be nervous about what's happening right now. There's a few things that give me hope. I mean, we have, as I said before, the courts that have largely held up.
Yeah.
Even Trump-appointed judges in district courts and appellate courts continuously rule against him. We've seen, for example, that the DOJ has sued 31 different states to get the voter rolls. And right now, the DOJ is 0-15 in those cases. And those cases are in large part being litigated by my buddy, Mark Elias, and his firm. And huge round of applause. He wrote the foreword for this book. And I'm really proud to have his name on the forward of this book. And he runs he also runs a great 501c3. I know that folks are often asking what's a good place to donate to. There's obviously candidates across the country, but I'm donating a portion of the proceeds from every single book sold in the pre-order period to a 501c3 that Mark runs called the Free Election Fund. And the Free Election Fund, when there's all this litigation, there's 84 cases right now that Mark Elias's law firm is litigating. And so when we see these cases where a firm defends in a lawsuit that the DOJ brought against a certain state, and another lawsuit, another lawsuit, another lawsuit, the Free Election Fund is what funds those actual lawsuits. So I believe deeply in the work that they do. Something else that gives me hope, I mean, we have seen an explosion of voices on the left in the pro-democracy ecosystem. I'm really proud to be joined on this stage by Don tonight with the great work that he does. I know that we kind of flippantly talked about the fact that we've both kind of fallen in the crosshairs, you in large part much more than me, but of this administration. And I know that's, look, that is not an easy thing to contend with, and it's not a cheap thing to contend with, and I'm sure not even from the legal side, but also having Trump sick his minions on you is not easy to contend with either, and the privacy that it requires and the security measures that it requires. So you are an inspiration in terms of how you've been able to continue to speak out even in light of a federal government that is wielding its tools against you as a private citizen. I think that you deserve a lot of credit for the grace that you have. That gives me hope. But more broadly in this ecosystem, I think that, as we see an explosion of voices, I started a 501c4 called Chorus, where we basically create an infrastructure for pro-democracy content creators on the left. And so we have almost 170 content creators who I speak to every single day who have a combined audience of 200 million people. Anything that we can do to elevate, to build up this ecosystem as fast as possible to make sure that we achieve some degree of parity. And I think in large part, we have for the first time, and this is the last thing I'll say in terms of what gives me hope, we have started to see that the only narratives that are prevailing are not just right-wing narratives where Democrats are swatting back some bogus bullshit talking point, and then we're desperately saying, oh, actually, we're going to fact-check this, and by the time we fact-check it, they've moved on to the next thing, next Pizzagate conspiracy theory, or vaccines, or have microchips from Bill Gates, whatever it is. We're just constantly, for my entire career in politics, it feels like we're just swatting back disinformation that is just emerging on the right, and it becomes the prevailing narrative. Now, for the first time, if something is happening that is critical of this administration, we're seeing that become the prevailing narrative. We see the extent to which Epstein has broken through and the cover-up that this administration is engaging in. We're seeing the fact that this war that Trump promised would never happen is happening anyway in opposition, in stark defiance to what he himself promised. We're seeing the extent to which prices are rising, even though Trump tries to claim every single day that we're the hottest economy in the world. It's getting harder for people. They're not able to own the narrative like they've been able to own the narrative in the past. And I think that's owed in large part to the fact that we have more voices in this ecosystem and people are getting smarter about how they get their news. And so, in this, that's why I do what I do. I'm sure that's why you do what you do too. People ask me, why don't you run for office? I'm a masochist, but not that much of a masochist. Why don't you run for office? And I think that the most important frontier in politics today is the media, and we can see the extent to which the media can manipulate people. And I know that everybody in this room has people in their lives who've been manipulated by what they've heard online or who've spent too much time on Facebook and their brains get broken. And I think it's a huge problem. And so, I've dedicated my career into making sure that we can counter some of that. And ultimately, what I would like to see is to make sure that we have dominance in this space. And it does give me hope that for the first time, we're able to win the narrative like I haven't seen before.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much for your kind words. And I will say, this last question is from Don L. I've never been jealous of anyone before. Where did you get that head of hair?
It could have been. I was real nervous about this hair because Jews are not known for it's not easy. It's not easy to control. It's not easy to control hair when you're a Jewish kid. So I'll just leave it at that. Don,
Brian
thank you
Tyler
so much
Cohen,
for
everybody.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just say one more thing. Let me say one more thing for everybody who's here. I know that there are a million reasons to give up in an environment like this, because it's not just that we feel despair because of what's going on, but I think that despair is engineered. I think they want us to feel despair. They want to drop a cavalcade, a bomb of just bad news on a daily basis so that we ultimately just throw our hands up and give up. And I think that to see whether it is millions of people taking to the streets with these No Kings protests on a monthly basis, or whether we're able to fill up a room of people in an off year of people who give a shit about politics, who are paying attention against all odds, that is really the thing that gives me the most hope in this moment. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you to the staff at the 92nd Street Y, and thank you all for coming out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody.